Hey everyone. This morning I got a call from a guy that was just released from prison yesterday, Lebanon. At that, he gave me a call from Dayton yesterday on his way to Columbus. Haven't even set foot yet into Columbus, but he wanted to share with us some of the issues that they're facing up at Lebanon. Um, I think the last month or so he spent in segregation there, and he stated to us that the water was so hot, people were dehydrating because they would not drink it. And it was over 100 degrees in segregation, and they would only bring ice to them once a day. Um, so people were flooding their cells just to bring the porters by there to get them ice. They were doing whatever it took. And this is about the third prison that we have gotten a complaint about. There's I think it was also Lebanon, or that they complained that the water was polluted or something not too long ago. And I knew there was a couple other institutions that face some of the same issues. But if you hear of something like this taking place, take action. Um, our men and women do not need to suffer like this. Their punishment is being incarcerated, not being abused. And that is exactly what is happening. I reported this to the DRC. We're going to see if they will take a stand or get involved in this. But with the next 3 or 4 days, it's going to be in the mid 90s. So we got to really crack down on what we're going to tolerate, and one we're not going to tolerate is the heat, excessive heat, um, lack of water, lack of ice. Um, if it's that hot in segregation, they need to put some type of air conditioning, at least in that part, like they do in medical and the administration offices. Don't think the administration offices go without air conditioning. I guarantee they don't. I've been in several of the warden's offices, and it was real nice in there with the air conditionings. Um, so we got to really take some of the complaints serious. And there's a lot that you can do as loved ones. One is contact the director directly and leave a complaint. Contact the state institutional inspector or Charlie Adams with the state inspection committee, which is separate from the state of Ohio, and get her involved. You could contact State Representative Adam Miller, who sits on the Institution Inspection Committee as well, and Charlie Adams runs it. But I have not really seen anything positive there because a lot of times she'll just say, "Well, I can't see any wrongdoings there," and she works for the legislators, not the DRC. So I would take those steps, and if that doesn't work, you might want to start with the warden, but I guarantee you that's going to be a waste of time. They don't want to believe there's any issues at the problem, just like the warden up at Richland says there's no gangs in their institution. He knows that as a fact. That was one I couldn't help but laugh when he said that because there's not one prison in Ohio that is gang free. Some are worse than others. But the summer months and the winter months are probably the worst for the inmates to handle. The dorms in the wintertime are extremely cold. They don't turn the heat on until the end of October, for one thing. And then a lot of times the officers will open up the doors during the day when it's 0 degree weather on purpose because of the inmates. I've seen that happen. And then in the summertime they have the exhaust fans going, but it really doesn't do anything. When you have 250 men in a dorm, then you expect to be fairly cool. It doesn't, and it's really awful. I've been in those settings for so many years. Rebecca, um, Charlie Adams. I don't. Let me see if I can find it. I know I have her on email. Um, and Adam Miller, you could just Google Ohio House and just send him an email there. The directors, I forget hers offhand, but I see if I could find any of those and post them underneath there. Um, but if family members aren't going to take a stand, to protect our loved ones or our friends, they're not going to, really have a fair chance in there. They could write the informals and grievances all they want, but we also know that they take them more as a joke when the inmate writes it, knowing if they don't, nothing will ever get done, and we can't really do anything unless they do the informal. And then, of course, you have that retaliation that takes, that happens after they file a complaint. And I know that happens too. The women's prisons are really bad with the retaliations compared to the men's. The average prison in Ohio has around anywhere from 18 to 2,000 inmates. The largest one has 3,000. That's Chillicothe. It's also from the furthest dorm at Chillicothe to the Chow Hall is exactly 1 mile. So it's a long walk for those that need to go to Chow Hall or to recreation or wherever they want to go up front. It's a long walk. Um, so just imagine how big the property is. North Central's huge too, but everything is fairly center located there. So I just wanted to share a little bit about the conditions in some of the prisons. I promised this guy that we'll publicize it. Whereas he was more concerned about his friends that he left behind. Uh, you know, he said the segregation unit was completely full. Summertime and around the holidays, usually it does get pretty well full. A lot of fights take place in the summertime as well as Christmas, Easter, just because the inmates are missing their families, so the tempers rise. But summertime, and springtime too, when you start getting spring fever, you'll see people go outside and at Ross it used to be they would go to the rack handball court because they had two big, they had four handball courts there, and they would fight. Once in a while, somebody would get killed there, but that's where they went to up at Grafton. They just went to the yard on the other side of the building. Um, I knew most of the hideouts, from the camps that I was in. At Luke, of course, they just did it in the hallway. They didn't really care. There was no place to hide there. After the riots, they turned the unit into one-man cells. Which was probably the best thing they ever did. But the riot would have never taken place if the warden wasn't. He kept taking away, and of course his clerk turned him into the inmates, and that was at the time Warden Tate. They said they fired him, but several years later, when my security dropped, I ended up at Belmont for a short stay before they rode me out, and he was the warden there. So they don't really fire these people. They just um, transfer them to a different facility. It's like we had a rec director up at Grafton, and it was a female. She got caught having sex with an inmate. She got walked out by State Highway Patrol, but when I ended up as a cadre in Lorain, there she is working right there in recreation. They didn't fire her, but then the union makes it almost impossible for them to fire officers, for anything really. Um, I know one thing that would get them fired fast is bringing drugs in because that's no tolerance, and that's something that they really need to do a better job at containing their own employees on that. Our people, is working on trying to stay sober, stay clean, so they can succeed upon their release. But when you have the CO that brings in coke, heroin, fentanyl, Suboxones, they leave just as addicted as they came in. Um, you know, it's ridiculous with everything that is happening. And I know some people think, oh, the system's great, the judicial system is great. Well, wait till you have a family member that goes through it, or wait till somebody might accuse you of something you did not do, and there you are sitting in prison because you're not going to have a fair chance. And that it has happened to one person I know about. He really dogged us for what we do. And then one day he called me from the county jail and said he was accused of something that did not happen. Well, he was fortunate enough that DNA came back and proved he did not commit the crime. But it was an eye opener, and he started seeing stuff the same way we do. So sometimes it takes a tragedy to change one's thinking, and of course that's not something that we wish. But all I can say is those that have family in there, stick by the side. They need help. We have several inmates, especially the old law inmates, because the population is getting older and older. We have a few inmates that have lost their family to death, or they might have just given up on them because they never did come home and they thought they would. And then they have no place to go. Nursing homes will not accept people. They might be in a wheelchair, and there they just drop them off on the side of the road. Now, the DRC says that does not happen, but it does. I got a call from State Representative Adam Miller about a year ago about a guy in a wheelchair that got dropped off by a hotel. Had just enough money for one day, but then, of course, no food because that's all he had. His family didn't want to have nothing to do with him. And about a week later or so, we heard on the news that a guy in a wheelchair got killed by a car running into him. And I always wondered if that was him or if he returned back to prison because the phone calls stopped. I never heard from him. But then how do you expect these people to succeed when you do 27 years and then you're dropped off in a place that you know nothing about, a drug infested place most of the time? Because they have to drive them off the property. They can't let them off the property, but they sure don't spend those few months before a person releases trying to find housing. And that's something that is in our bill that the case manager will do a better job on finding resources, housing for these people so that they can start over instead of worrying about, where am I going to get my next meal? Um, and go back to what they know just because they're pushed in the corner and that's the first thing that comes to their mind. And I get it because I probably would be the same way. I'm not saying it's right, but you got to do what you have to sometimes to survive. And then they wonder why the violence on the street is getting so bad. Well, if you assist these folks coming out of prison with employment, housing, a support team, I guarantee you that will cut down on the violence on the street. But we need churches involved. We need civic groups involved. We need neighbors, the community involved. And that's a hard sales, especially churches. Um, I come from the Christian faith, so I'm not disrespecting them, but the Christians have made so many promises and did not keep them. So our younger people are leaning towards other faiths. Then when you get out of prison, you walk into a Christian church, and especially in Columbus, they'll ask you to please leave because of your record. I mean, it's like God restricts who can come into his house. And that's really ridiculous. Now, my church welcomes everybody. The Church for All People on the corner of Whittier and Parsons Avenue in Columbus. I started a program there years ago called the New Beginnings, and it was a support group for men and women when they were coming out. Then it just ended up turning into men, but that's still going strong. I'm not part of it anymore, but they have a retired pastor that leads that heads the reentry section of the church. Um, so there's some churches that will have programs for people. Then there's so many that don't, and so many that will not even let you in, walk in those doors. Or if you walk into them, the pastor will come up to you, and politely ask you to leave because people feel intimidated. So that's called stereotyping people. And that's one thing that we really need to work on, and not worry about somebody's past or every mistake they did, but worry about who they are today. Have they changed? I believe most people can change if they choose to do so. Um, but I also believe some do not um, change because they choose not to. And those are the ones that should not get out because they're just not ready. 40% of our population in Ohio is doing 2 years or less. Then those sentenced before 1996, almost all of them are doing life um, because of the pre-sentence bill 2, which those that don't understand what that is the Truth in Sentencing Act of 1996. It was actually passed in 1995, but took effect in 1996. That anybody after 1996 would not see the parole board except lifers, which would be murder cases. Everybody else would get flat time. Like under the new law, I would have only done 5 years. Under the old law, I did 25 years. Same crime, um, but a different sentence because I was sentenced, before this law took effect. I was sentenced in '87, got out in 2011. So, there's so many things that really need to be changed. But our bill at least will be a start on reforming the parole board so people will have a chance for a fair hearing. We don't, it's not just going to release people. It's going to release the right people, and I think a big portion of our folks would be released. It won't bring them up any earlier to the parole board, but it will affect them at the next hearing. Now, maybe that's something we could work at after our bill passes about trying to get them brought up earlier. I just heard from an inmate yesterday at one of the institutions that said the director and the parole board is going right back to their old ways um, that they were before Shirley Smith came out with her um, statement on what is happening. Something we already knew, but it was just confirmed by her, and it helped us out in the long run. So it's going to be interesting to see exactly if they're going to keep the path and change, or they're going to go back to their old ways of mentally abusing people, eating, being on the phone, getting up and walking out. Remember, these people are fighting for their lives at a parole hearing. So they should get the respect and the dignity that they do deserve. If you claim innocence, they have a habit of giving you more time because they don't want to believe anybody's innocent in there. I mean, of course, the state don't want to release it because they have to pay that money to the individual. So, and we do know there's that percentage that is innocent. Then we also know that there's another percentage that claims to be innocent that's not. That hurts those that are really innocent. So we need people to tell the truth and change, take the programming, stay out of trouble as hard as it may be. Sometimes you have to, turn around and walk away. Something I could not do, but I learned how to do it once I got out here. So I hope some of the information, especially the abuse that's taken place with the heat and segregation, the next 3 or 4 days, as most of you know, is going to be in mid 90s, 95 and 96 I think is the hottest day that's going to be in Columbus area. And the humidity is going to be really bad. So usually when it's this hot, they turn off the lights in the dorms, um, which does make it a little bit cooler, but not enough. They have fans in the air, but that really doesn't do anything except blow around hot air. So they need to do something that these people will get some relief. The ice during the summertime is usually out by late morning, so there's no more ice at the time. So you know, the biggest saying that people say to me, well, if they don't like it, don't get in trouble. Well, you know, since they're there, they don't deserve to be abused. And it's easier for you to say, if they commit the crime, what if you get accused of something that you did not do? Will you feel the same way? I would hope not. Well, stay cool, everyone. Join us Sunday night on Voices of Reform at 6:30. Sunday we have that fundraiser at City Barbecue in Grove City. If you would like the coupon, because we need as many people to go there as possible, we have a coupon that we can email you. Please send us an email at fairtreatmentreform@gmail.com, and I'll make sure you get a flyer. Or we have a protest coming up on the 26th of July, and our conference on August 3rd on wrongful convictions and parole reform. So until then, folks, stay cool today and stay out of the heat.